Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Got my co-host with me, Sam.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel.
I'm Phil. We're Bars and Barbells, and we're checking out some more military content today. How strong is the United States military, and why is the U.S. military the strongest? We've gone into some components of the U.S. military, the A-10 Warthog, the F-22. We've checked out fighter pilots taking off. We've looked into U.S. versus China conflicts.
We recently did the Navy SEALs.
Navy SEALs. We've dumped in. No, let's not do that. We've jumped in to a whole lot of content that we've really enjoyed, and it's been a great learning experience.
Yeah, it's been really cool. I knew nothing about the military in the U.S. or anywhere else for that matter prior to this channel. So
it's been really eye-opening to see the power of it, but I don't know if we've captured it in its capacity. I mean, we did a video a long time ago, I think 5 reasons why the U.S. military is super strong or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was long time ago, early in our channel. So let's come back to it. Maybe this has got some more updated information. You ready to check it out?
Let's do it.
Let's roll.
Why is the US military the strongest? Great military powers have been appearing and disappearing since the beginning of history.
True.
Now is the time for the United States of America to be the leader in military might. But what makes it so powerful? Will its power remain undisputed? Are there already signs of weakness? Would it really stand in a conflict with potential rivals like China or Russia? To find out, we should analyse why exactly the US military is considered the strongest. The numbers. The US has 1,400,000 active military personnel. This figure places it in third place in this category.
China's first.
China has the largest army with slightly above 2 million soldiers.
2 million.
While India comes in second place. This doesn't sound that impressive, but what makes the US military stand out is not necessarily the raw number of men. The US has unquestionable air supremacy. The US military is number 1 in air power, with 13,264 total military aircraft.
Holy crap.
A total that is greater than the other 5 greatest air forces
combined. Look at that
combined.
difference. That's crazy.
2,085 are air-to-air fighters, 715 ground attack aircraft, 945 transportation aircraft, 5,768 helicopters, and 967 attack helicopters.
Crazy.
The US is number 1 in each aircraft category, except for air-to-ground forces, where it's slightly topped by Russia. The US has a powerful navy that is designed to work in conjunction with its air forces. It has 20 aircraft carriers.
That's
11 are regular fixed-wing carriers, while 9 are capable of hosting only helicopters and short takeoff planes like the F-35B. This is almost half of the world's total number of aircraft carriers, while most of the others belong to allied countries. If we take into account only regular fixed-wing aircraft capacity, the total combined deck space of the US aircraft carriers is over twice that of all the other nations combined.
Wow.
To complement this, the US Navy has the greatest number of destroyers and ranks 3rd in the number of submarines.
Japan is 2nd? That's surprising.
Wow.
The numbers of the
has
US naval strength are a bit tricky. If we count the total number of naval assets, the US falls in 4th place, behind Russia and China, and even behind North Korea, that boasts a surprising 1st place.
What?
However, in case of a maritime conflict, it would still be hard to counter the power of the US Navy, supported by overwhelming air supremacy and allied forces. Land power. The US is slightly behind Russia regarding raw numbers. American ground forces number 6,289 tanks, 39,000 armoured vehicles, 1,465 self-propelled artillery, and 1,366 rocket projectors. However, Russia has a lot of outdated vehicles with questionable performance in case of a real conflict. Meanwhile, the US military has a broad technological edge. The US has 5,800 nuclear warheads that make it the world's 2nd largest in nuclear war power. In this video, we're analysing the conventional military strength, but it can't be denied that a nuclear arsenal does bring a certain status. Even if things don't escalate to a full-blown nuclear war, it's intimidating to any country to be armoured with such nuclear power.
I will say that 5,800 nukes is kind of overkill.
Yeah, it's like insane. Also, I'm really surprised about how high on that list North Korea was for some of those things.
I was really surprised as well.
What?
Even I think there was one point I said Japan was number 2.
Yeah.
Really surprised to see some of those numbers. But as she mentioned, it's really important to factor in the capabilities of what they're counting.
It's
right?
not just numbers.
Yeah, if it's just sitting in a barn somewhere, it doesn't really matter.
Can't even turn on.
Yeah. And, even the active troop members, I was surprised to see China so high on there. But I saw the military parade from China not too long ago. And it was pretty wild how organized it was. I was pretty impressed with it. They obviously put a lot of effort into the military parade. It was like the 85th anniversary of one of the conflicts. And it was pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I mean, I think another thing you have to consider is if you look at the population of countries like China and India compared to the others, it's like
relative wise. Yeah, of course. The U.S. is a lot, relatively speaking, right?
Yeah.
The quality. The US Army consists entirely of trained professionals, and many have real combat experience. Since the beginning of this century, the US has been involved in military conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Somalia,
everywhere,
Libya, Uganda, and Yemen. While other countries still rely on conscripts to fill the numbers, the US can field an army of well-trained, experienced professionals. The equipment, the military assets, and the technology used in combat have excellent quality. This is the defining reason why US casualties are usually fewer than those of their adversaries. A strong ability to project power is another defining trait of the United States military. Size, technology, and experience are nothing if you can't reach the enemy.
Dropping bombs on
Power
Iran.
projection is the ability of a state to deploy and sustain forces outside its territory. Only a few states are capable to overcome the difficulties that involve power projection, and the US excels at it. This is made possible by several factors. The home base of the US is safe. The neighbouring countries are friendly. Potential enemies are far away. The large landmass makes it a country that is hard to invade. It also has coastlines along 2 oceans and strategic islands that hold military bases. The US forces can reach far, fast, and deploy great numbers of forces supported by the enforcement of air and sea superiority, combined with excellent transportation capabilities. Even if it doesn't engage in combat, the US can enforce naval and air blockades that can severely cripple an enemy's economy. The US has by far the largest network of military bases operating outside of its territory.
Oh, yeah.
Information regarding the exact number and location of such bases involves classified information, so we can only estimate the total extent of the overseas military presence. Back in 2013, the Pentagon stated that there were around 600 military bases overseas.
600.
A rough estimate would be around 1,000 overseas US military compounds. Approximately 165,000 military personnel is stationed outside the United States. This doesn't include areas of conflict such as Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The US has significant forces deployed in around 55 countries and autonomous territories. It is also estimated that more than 150 countries have a certain degree of US military presence. Alliances.
That makes me think of, we did the history, how many countries has Britain conquered, right? The history of Britain and its influence. And that reminds me of what we just saw in the US and their influence and how many bases they have around the world, because that military influence, and then you see the political influence and everything else, it really lends to the idea that we're witnessing right now the empire of the United States.
Yeah.
Right? Some may argue, as it alluded to in the beginning, that empire is starting to crumble a little bit and fray a little bit. We're about to get into alliances here, which, I don't know how old this video is, but obviously we see in 2025 that some of those alliances are being fractured a bit, right? And that's a part of the empire, is that everybody kind of backs the lead dog, right? And so it's interesting, just, like I said, looking back, you look at all the great empires that have existed, and we are witnessing one in the US. How long it remains, or how long it lasts for, remains to be seen. But it's clearly they've got dominance on the military side of things, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was also interesting because we had talked the last time you paused it about the total personnel numbers. And something I didn't even factor into until it talked about it after was conscriptions, right? Like the US is completely voluntary. Like everybody's in the US military because they want to be, and then they show up, which puts them in a different mindset to be trained properly and to put in the effort. Whereas countries like China and India, I'm pretty sure both of them still have conscriptions.
Yeah, patriotism matters as to why you're there, right? In terms of morale, for sure.
Yeah.
The United States can rely on a vast network of alliances. It is the de facto leader of NATO, the world's strongest military alliance. 18 other countries are designated as major non-NATO allies. This list includes countries like Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Thailand, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Egypt, Israel, Argentina, and Brazil. Taiwan's status is a bit more complicated, and it can be considered a de facto ally. Some countries are not formal allies, but have a strong strategic partnership with the US. One notable example is India, that participates in regular military drills together with US forces and some of its allies. Economy. Modern warfare is sustained in the long term by two main factors: the capacity to produce military equipment and the capacity to spend money on defence. American defence companies are the indisputable top producers of weaponry. Among the world's top 10 defence suppliers, 5 of them are American companies. Lockheed Martin is the biggest. It reported a revenue of almost $60 billion in 2019.
Not bad.
That's close to Russia's entire annual military spending.
What?
The strength of the US military is also due to its huge military budget. In 2019, spending on the US military was a whopping $732 billion.
Insane.
That's almost 3 times more than China, the world's second largest military spender, and is roughly 1/3 of the entire world's defence budget. While Russia is commonly regarded as the second most powerful army in the world, its budget consists of only $65 billion. Arguably, there is an aspect of purchasing power. For example, it's cheaper to pay a Russian or Chinese soldier, but the cost of high-quality military equipment is still the same around the world. The reason that the US can afford such an enormous military budget is that it's supported by a strong economy. America has been the world's largest economy since 1871. Its nominal GDP is currently $21.44 trillion. This is almost a quarter of the global economy, and it's backed with plenty of natural resources, advanced infrastructure, and technology. Besides the ability to sustain an enormous defence budget, the US often uses its economic strength as a weapon by enforcing economic sanctions.
I think they left out one important resource in the United States dollar and the reserve currency. That is their biggest resource, and how they can obviously export dollars and then have government spending that goes into their military budget and allows them to have a $36 trillion debt burden, right? So they left that part out, which is probably the most critical component to being able to spend on the military and fund the research and development costs.
Yeah, they also didn't mention in their economy the taxes that they collect from their citizens.
Yeah, I mean, that goes hand in hand with purchasing power as well. But for sure, it does play a role, right? And you have to, I think what they're alluding to is like, you have to have a strong economy to collect those taxes, which are then going to pay for the things that, you know, they're talking about in this video, right?
Yep.
Soft factors. Soft power is another factor that comes into play when assessing a country's might. The US is world-beating in culture, education, and technology. American pop culture has an enormous influence, and this won't change anytime soon. America also hosts most of the world's top-ranking universities with a record number of international students. The US leads the world of technology and digitalization as home to the world's most influential tech companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook.
Nvidia.
It's easy to think that this doesn't seem important in warfare, but imagine an enemy soldier that would have to attack the country where his cousin studies, the country of his favourite music band, the country of his favourite actors from the movie that he watches on an American media platform like YouTube, or an American smartphone with American software. Finally, there is another critical aspect. It is called the will to fight. And this is the single most important factor in war.
Samantha's point.
The will to fight is the disposition to engage in combat, the determination to keep fighting even when facing precarious odds, and finally to win. At an individual level, a soldier with a low will to fight will avoid engagement with the enemy and is likely to flee when things get tough. A battle is won when the enemy's will to fight is broken. Wars don't end when one military destroys the other. Wars end when one side grows weary of fighting, doesn't see any further purpose in the continuation of the conflict, and gives up. The national will to fight is what keeps a nation fighting. This is commonly linked to a sense of patriotism, national identity, and motivation generated by the idea that one fights for what is right. In the past, this has been a strong point of the US, as Americans have been fighting against dictators and terrorists that lacked concern for human life and dignity. In contrast, the USA has been regarded as a country that embodies values of freedom, democracy, and rule of law. It was the country that defined such values. Even more, it was the country that was willing to fight for these values. The American soldier has been motivated by a sense of moral supremacy rooted in the country's Christian tradition. However, America doesn't seem to be so cohesive in its values anymore. There are many factors intertwined that provoke this. It's a complex topic that deserves a study on its own. But the outcome is that America is now a country that is greatly divided among ideological lines and systems of belief.
Sure
Many of its
is.
citizens are not sure what to believe in anymore, or even what they stand for. There have been many lessons in history. Small nations became great empires by holding high moral standards along with a disciplined and motivated army. A great empire's fall was usually preceded by internal strife and moral crisis. The final story of the United States of America as a global power is not yet written. The nation's strength rests upon its citizens and their decisions. It's a matter of this great nation getting back its cohesion and moral compass. That is, if it wants to keep its status as the world's greatest superpower and defender of freedom.
Ending the video with some facts there. And we kind of brought that up throughout our conversations, which I definitely agree. It's kind of a change that's taking place, and where we go to is the unknown. I will say that, one thing I've always really envied about the US is when I see people from the United States talking so passionately about their Constitution. It's something that I don't see anywhere else, that like the Constitution is so important and people recognize as citizens why it's important and why they can't allow it to fray. And it's kept them, I think, on the trajectory they've been on for so long. And we're starting to see it fray now. People starting to push back a little bit about what the Constitution represents or whether it's that important. And I think what, was alluded to at the end there, the balancing act of the Constitution and the laws that govern the country as it is and give it the moral compass that it has versus where we're going now, where this free and autonomy, like you have this conflicting idea of what freedom actually means. And, within a structured society, freedom, you have your freedom to do as you please, but also you do what's good for the best of everybody as a country as a whole.
There needs to be some order in the chaos.
The standards, right? But I think what's happening recently is people want the personal autonomy, the personal freedom, and that's conflicting in their ideas about, what people are entitled to do. And it's kind of, fracturing the state because people have different perspectives on what that means. And so, I think obviously the political spectrum is a big part of why that's happening. But I think the political spectrum tends to mirror what people's lives are doing. So, obviously people feed into that and create narratives and separate us and divide us.
I think the division is a big piece of it right now.
Yeah, and I think that's constructed in a lot of ways by people that are trying to seize power.
100%.
And that's
easier to manipulate people when they're separated.
That's why falling back to something like the Constitution is so important, right? And we're not Americans, we're Canadians. But it's something I've seen. I never see, I look at Canadians and I'm like, too often I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, you're just pissing away all your, everything you've worked for and earned.
Nobody is ever referring to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just, I think people take it for granted, right? Because we haven't had to fight like the US has had to fight for it. So, anyways, I thought it was cool to see this broader perspective on the totality of the U.S., not just the military side, but there are other aspects that make it the empire that it is.
Yeah, 100%, and influence it as such a superpower in the world.
Well, let us know what you think down below. Hit the comment section, subscribe, give us recommendations for another video. Have a great day. We'll see you in our next video.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.